A Clash of Kings begins with Arya losing her hair and venturing into a wasteland towards the end of the earth. A traveler in her party dies of mysterious causes, and they eventually find an abandoned village where they rest. This beginning strongly parallels Daenerys' beginning, who also loses her hair, also ventures into a wasteland towards the end of the earth, and also has her companion die of mysterious causes. And Daenerys also finds an abandoned village where she rests. And to a lesser degree, it parallels Jon, who also ventures into a wasteland and finds an abandoned village. Jon doesn't lose his hair or a companion, though. I bring up these parallels because Arya, Daenerys, and Jon all venture into their wasteland with cages. Daenerys' group brings 3 dragons, and Jon's group brings ravens, of which 3 can speak the name Snow. Dragons, of course, are related to Daenerys' eventual special ability of dragon riding, and ravens are related to Jon's eventual special ability of skin changing. Which brings us to Arya. She brings with her a cage of men, Jaqen, Roarg, and Biter. And Jaqen is a faceless man, which again is related to Arya's eventual special ability of face changing. But with 3 dragons and 3 talking ravens, I have to ask, were there actually 3 faceless men in that cage? Are Roarg and Biter faceless men as well? Well, let's go back and follow the adventures of Roarg and Biter. The story of Jaqen, Roarg, and Biter begins in the Black Cells. We aren't sure how long they've been there. All we know is the jailer, Rennifer Longwaters, thinks they're a dangerous lot and claims he didn't want them released. However, proper paperwork was in order and the 3 are given to Yoren. Yoren also believes they're dangerous and refuses to release them from chains until they get to the Wall. I'm not certain how men so dangerous and antisocial would ever be used at the Wall. Jaqen claims he didn't choose his companions in the Black Cells, but the 3 were housed together for some reason despite there being plenty of vacant cells. The unified housing points to a unified crime, but we don't have any idea what that crime might be. Jaqen claims that he gave Biter his name, which is interesting as Roarg continues to use the name Biter when Jaqen is gone. This implies that Roarg met Biter later than Jaqen did, or at the same time. After all, had Roarg and Biter known each other previously, Roarg would have had his own name for Biter. After their escape from the cage, Roarg and Biter choose to remain attached to Jaqen. They join Sir Amory's men together, they ride together, they continue to eat together, and they know each other's locations. Roarg and Biter also seem subservient to Jaqen. Within minutes of Jaqen agreeing to free the Northerners from the Harrenhal cells, Roarg and Biter appear to assist Jaqen. Now perhaps Roarg simply fears Jaqen can hurt him, which is something Arya thinks about. But we should also keep in mind it's Roarg who ends up wielding the axe when the 3 escape from their cage. So Roarg chose to free Jaqen from his manacles. Roarg and Biter also share some similar faceless man qualities to Jaqen. Roarg, like Jaqen, is a spy who keeps a close watch on Arya. He remembers each of Arya's nicknames and later taunts her with them. Biter may also have the ability to transform his face. Brienne finds Biter's face is like putty, and his jaw can open impossibly wide. Biter also has on his face weeping sores, which is something the waif says she can give people. It's also something on the face of the plagued man at the House of Black and White. No other characters in our story are described as having weeping sores. That is, except for Ralph Kenning, who's on his deathbed. Jaqen, Roarg, and Biter also have the incredible and unexplainable ability to fit in and perhaps influence people. Let's keep in mind that Roarg is a noseless brute of a man. 90% of what comes out of his mouth are threats to rape someone or something equally brutal. And Biter is a feral man with filed teeth who can't speak. Yet for some reason, after Amory Lorch slaughters Yoren's men, Lorch makes Jaqen, Roarg, and Biter Lannister men and gives them horses and armor. Now yes, the trio likely killed Yoren, but it's still hard to believe that Sir Amory would employ such dangerous, unpredictable men. After the brave companions take Harrenhal from Sir Amory, Roarg and Biter are then assimilated into their sellsword company. Now this switch is a tad more believable, but still unlikely. Yes, the brave companions are a pretty brutal bunch and Roarg and Biter did help out with the weasel soup incident. Still, Roarg seems like a liability for the brave companions. Vargo Hoat actually has to assign a guard to prevent Roarg from raping Brienne, and when Brienne is being rescued from the bear pit, it appears Roarg even threatens Vargo. What's particularly odd about Roarg's professional career is that almost immediately after joining the Brave Companions, Roarg sits with the lieutenants. How on earth did he rise so fast? And after the Brave Companions abandon Harrenhal to the mountain, the company splits into 3 groups. One heads to Old Town, another to Maidenpool, and Roarg leads a third to Saltpans. So Roarg went on to achieve a leadership position. Somehow. Now, if Rourke and Biter were faceless men, it changes the narrative of Arya's 3 deaths a bit. When Arya tells Jaqen her first name, Chiswick, Rourke is sitting right next to Jaqen. Chiswick is later thrown from the battlements, a job that rings of Rourke. When Arya tells Jaqen her second name in the bathhouse, Weiss, a serving maid is with Jaqen. This is a bit odd, as when Arya and Brienne both use the bathhouse, fierce old ladies run it. Weiss is later brutally mauled, a job that rings of Biter. Now yes, Arya seems to think that a drugged dog killed Weiss, but if Jaqen used Basilisk's blood to drug a dog, where did he hide it when he was in the black cells? Did he have a vial of ass blood with his ass coin? If Rourke and Biter killed Chiswick and Weiss, it may be that Rourke and Biter were paying their own debts, just as Jaqen was. Another connection to the Faceless Men for Rourke and Biter is their obsession with Arya. Rourke and Biter were definitely trying to find her. You see, after Jaime and Brienne leave Harrenhal, the brave companions soon hear about the Mountain's coming arrival. They decide to abandon Vargo Hoat and split into 3 groups. They are led by Urswick the Faithful, Timian, and Rourke. Tywin theorizes that the brave companions will head to ports to escape Westeros. Urswick's group heads to Old Town. However, Timian and Rourke's groups act a little odd. Rather than heading straight to a port, Rourke and Timian's groups head up to the Trident, where they come upon 3 members of the Brotherhood Without Banners. They kill and torture them and discover that the Hound is traveling with Arya. Now, I will say, that is an awfully specific piece of information to get out of someone when torturing them. I'm not even sure the brave companions would know who Arya Stark is, and if they did, they would probably think she's up in Winterfell getting married to Ramsay. That's certainly what the Mountain's men thought. The only person who would know that Arya is even in the area is Rourke, who may have pieced things together just as Jaqen did. So after torturing the Brotherhood, Rourke and Timian's groups get on the Hound and Arya's trail and make it to the inn at the crossroads. There they torture the owner of the inn for information on where the Hound and Arya went. The owner likely did hear the Hound say that he was heading to Saltpans to catch a ship. At this point, Timian's group splits with Rourke's group. Timian's group heads to Maidenpool, while Rourke and company head to Saltpans. Rourke's company comes upon the Hound's helmet, and Rourke takes on the Hound's identity, a somewhat faceless man action. With the Hound presumed dead, they must think at this point that Arya is alone. Once in Saltpans, Rourke's group burns every building in the area in a likely search for Arya. Keep in mind, burning a town down is specifically mentioned as a tactic to find people. We lose touch with Rourke's group until Brienne makes it to the inn at the crossroads. Rourke and company have tricked the Brotherhood Without Banners in heading north so that they can attack the inn. It's uncertain why Rourke and company want to attack the inn so badly. Perhaps they think Willow might be Arya, as Brienne did. Or perhaps they think Gendry might know where Arya is. Rourke and Biter are killed by Brienne and Gendry at the inn at the crossroads, and with them died many of their secrets. While we don't know if they were faceless men, their links to Jaqen, their special abilities, and their obsession with Arya point to some sort of connection to the House of Black and White. In fact, they physically are black and white. Of course, if Rourke and Biter were faceless men, this means that 3 faceless men were on a job. Their target must have been really important and really difficult to kill. Now, some of you may note that our author gave a background for Rourke and Biter to some fans during a 2006 book tour. Rourke ran a fighting pit and Biter was a fighter in it. And while that's interesting, it doesn't tell us anything about the Rourke and Biter in our story. Faceless men assume other people's identity, so who the original Rourke and Biter were is kind of irrelevant. Now, there is one more person in Arya's life who reminds us of a faceless man, and that's Syrio Forel. Syrio, like the faceless men, is from Braavos. And like the Faceless Men, Syrio promotes quiet movement, blind training, and the observation of lies. However, in other ways, Syrio is the anti-Faceless Man. We first meet Syrio in the second Arya chapter of A Game of Thrones. We aren't sure who recommended Syrio to Ned, I'm guessing it was Van Poole, but Syrio had an excellent reputation. He's not a no one, in fact, he's somewhat famous. Syrio begins his lesson with Arya by telling her that all men are made of water, and when you pierce them, the water leaks out and they die. Now, we aren't quite certain what religion Syrio is, but I would say there's a good chance he worships the Father of Waters, and not the many-faced god. Perhaps most significantly, Syrio tells Arya that she is never allowed to drop her sword, as it is part of her. The steel must be a part of your arm. Can you drop part of your arm? No. 9 years Syrio Forel was first sword to the Sea Lord of Braavos. He knows these things. Listen to him, boy. I'm a girl. Boy, girl, you are a sword, that is all. This is of course the exact opposite of the House of Black and White, who encourages Arya to abandon her sword after they see her practicing with it. One night the waif happened to be passing and saw Arya at her swordplay. The girl did not say a word, but the next day the kindly man walked Arya back to her cell. "You need to rid yourself of all of this." It's important to note that Syrio was the first sword to the Sea Lord of Braavos for 9 years, and let's remember that the House of Black and White is very interested in the coming election of the Sea Lord, and that Arya was smuggled into Braavos to avoid the Sea Lord's inspection. So the Faceless Men seem antagonistical to the current Sea Lord, and while we don't know if the current Sea Lord is Syrio's Sea Lord, I would say it's very, very likely that Syrio's Sea Lord was antagonistical to the Faceless Men as well. You see, Syrio tells a story on how he became the first sword to the Sea Lord. Now, Syrio's a good fighter, but he's not the best around. But that wasn't even part of the interview process. No, to become first sword, Syrio was asked to examine a cat and tell what he saw. Others saw a fantastical beast, but Syrio saw a cat, and says so. Now at first glance, Syrio's tale is a retelling of The Emperor Has No Clothes, but that just doesn't seem likely. Of all the Bravos that came to see the Sea Lord, no other applicant said a cat before Syrio? Really? No one? How is that possible? And why was the ability to call a cat more important than sword skill when choosing a bodyguard? Well, let's remember that our story is a world of glamours, and Braavos is a city that contains a guild of glamoured assassins. It makes much more sense if this was a glamoured cat. And the kindly man tells us that glamours melt before keen eyes, and so if Syrio had keen eyes, the cat's glamour would melt away. It seems likely that Syrio got his job because he could see through glamours. Essentially, Syrio would be able to spot a faceless man, a fine skill, perhaps an essential skill, for protecting the Sea Lord of Braavos. So it seems likely that Syrio was a man whose job it was to spot faceless men, and therefore it seems unlikely that he would be a faceless man himself. Of course, it's possible that he's a faceless man pretending to be Syrio Forel, but we could also make that argument for anyone. From what we know about Syrio, the philosophy and politics just don't match up. But what are the politics of the faceless men? Well, we'll talk about the politics of Braavos in Part 3. Curious how Ice and Fire may end? You can check out George R. R. Martin's other writings at the Thousand Worlds Book Club.